video lesson as you call it, lesson 4.3, where we're going to talk about proving triangles congruent by side, side, side. I first want to talk about what we talked about in class last time, which was just exploring the craziness that is congruent triangles. And so first what I had you do was I had you draw a triangle on a piece of patty paper, and I had you label it triangle ABC. And so what we did next was we took that triangle, we copied part of it onto, well, we copied the whole thing actually onto a second sheet of patty paper. And what I did to have you do that first was I had you first draw a really long line. And that really long line, we put a point on it and we labeled it A prime. For this video, we're just going to call it point D. So we labeled it point D, and the next step what we did was we wanted to copy B. We wanted to copy point B onto my line. Now the problem is where do we copy that? You can do that using, you can figure out where to copy it using your compass and your straight edge. So what you do is you would put your point of your compass on one of your points, in this case A, and then you would open your compass to B and then swing an arc. Now that arc is the same length away from A as the whole line segment AB. So don't change your compass width, and you move your compass to point D, and you put your point of your compass on D, and you're going to swing that arc. That's the same distance as AB is now. Only this time we're going to call it point E. Just because we don't want it to be the exact same. It's not the exact same point, it's a copy of it. So we're trying to show that it's a copy, not the exact same thing. So the distance now that we have from D to E is the exact same distance, or should be, as AB if we did it correctly. I'm freehanding this as opposed to you should be using a compass and a straight edge or a ruler if you have a ruler. But for us, and this is what we did in class, we used the compass and a straight edge, whereas I'm just freehanding it. So it's not going to turn out quite as nicely as it would if you used your straight edge and compass. So the next step, after you copy that first line segment, we know automatically after we've copied it that that line segment is the same as our new one. AB and DE are congruent. So the next thing we have to do is figure out, okay, well, how do I find the next length? Let's look at BC. Since B and E are the copies of each other, I'm going to put my compass point at B. And I'm going to open my compass to the length of BC. So I'm going to open my compass so that it's one point is on B and my pencil is on C. And when I get my pencil to C, I'll swing an arc to make sure I'm there. Next thing, you're going to move your compass. Don't change the width again. And you're going to move it to point E. Put your point on E, and you're going to swing an arc. Now this arc could be as small as you want, but it could also be as big as you want. The reason you might want to make it a little bigger is because you don't know where your other arc is going to cross. We're going to make another arc here. That's the length of AC. So that when it intersects my first arc, it will match up, and that'll be my new point for C. That'll be the copy of point C. So the next thing we do is we look at, okay, I got my first arc, now I got to get my second arc. So I put my point of my compass on A again, but this time we're going to open our compass to AC instead of AB. And I'm going to swing an arc at point C. So now that I have my compass open to the length of AC, I put my compass on point D again, that's the copy of point A, and I swing an arc. Now this time it doesn't have to be a really long arc, it just has to cross our first arc. I'm a little inaccurate here because it's such a thick line that I've drawn, but that's okay. Now I look at, for the video it's okay. In your drawing it should be more accurate. It should just be one single line, not 3 or 4 drawn on the same spot. So, where they intersect though, that is your new point. In this case I'm going to call it F. So these 3 points you can then connect with your straight edge. So I'm going to connect E and D to point F. Now as you can see, my triangle isn't an exact copy, but if you were to follow the rules that we did in class, you should get the same exact triangle. If not the same exact, it should be really close. And so this is what we call side, side, side. And the reason it's called side, side, side is because we copied 3 line segments from one triangle onto a new triangle. And thus we have AB, line segment AB, congruent to line segment DE. And we have line segment BC, congruent to line segment EF. And lastly, line segment AC, congruent to line segment DF. And because I've copied each of the sides, that's why we call it side, 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 because I have 2 sides congruent, the first 2 sides congruent, then the second 2 sides congruent, and lastly the third 2 sides congruent. And this is basically what we explored in class. How do we get side, side, side? And this is how you get it. This is where it comes from. So the next thing is pretty much all this lesson's really all about, but I'll just talk about a little bit of key information here that is essential to knowing side, side, side. You just have to remember that when you're talking about side, 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 you're always talking about 2 congruent triangles. So I'm going to copy these ones exactly how they look, but I have that ability in my app that I have here. So I have 2 congruent triangles. They may not be the same exact triangles, but they have the same length. And so because they have the same values of length, I can call them congruent. So triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF by side, side, side. And because they're congruent by side, 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 I'm allowed to switch back and forth by saying if I had the 2 triangles congruent, then my sides will be congruent. And vice versa. If I have sides congruent, then I know my triangles will be congruent. And you can check this. If you copy one onto a second sheet of patty paper, you can move the triangles on top of each other and notice that they are in fact the same exact triangle, copies of each other. And so this is why side, side, side works, because they're exact copies of one another. So that's pretty much all the information for this part of the section. Let's look at an example problem. So let's say I have an equilateral triangle. And we know it's equilateral because all the sides are the same. And then from that, we have 2 other triangles that I want to prove, actually I'm going to make that higher, that I want to prove are congruent to each other. So if I have triangle ABC here and triangle DEF or CDE here, I need a little bit more information. So if I get information that AB is congruent to DE, and then I say, let's say BC is 7 and CD is also 7 units. Now you're telling me, well, it's obvious that they're congruent, right? They all have the same sides congruent. But the question is what am I asking? I'm asking which triangles are congruent? I'm going to say triangle ABC. Is that congruent to triangle EDC? Okay. Now again, order matters here. A matches with E, B matches with D, C matches with C. And if I look at the line segments, they also match up. AB to ED, BC to DC, and so on. So if I want to prove this, I can't just say it's obvious. I have to write down my statements in a logical step-by-step process. So first off, in any proof that we do, if you remember from our proofs chapter, you have to write down the given. So our first given is that I would say I'd start with AC congruent to EC. And the reason for this is because they have the one arc. And so I'd say they're congruent because in the diagram it's given to me. And again, I can say AB, using the same reasoning, is congruent to ED because it's also given in the diagram. Now you're saying to yourself, well, BC and DC are also congruent, right? Because they have the same measure. But you can't jump to that congruent conclusion until you say that they have the same measure. So first we're going to say BC is equal to DC. And this would be given. They both have a measure of 7. And now that I have equal measures, I can then say the shape itself, that's when we put the bar over the top, is congruent to the other shape itself. And this is the definition of congruent segments. And I'm abbreviating here because I don't have a lot of room, but you could write it out or you can abbreviate it. I'm okay with either. So now, if you notice, we have a side, and a side congruent. So I've got side, side, side. Perfect. Now what am I saying is congruent? Triangle ABC is congruent to triangle, again, match it up, EDC by side, side, side. And that's how you would do this kind of problem. So up next is your multiple choice question. Here it is for you. Make sure you pause the video to look over the question as much time as you need. Reflect on it. Make sure you answer both the question for the multiple choice question and how you answered multiple choice question. I want to see the process you went through. So again, make sure you answer the question in terms of A, B, C, or D, but also make sure you answer how you came up with your answer, A, B, C, or D. And I want you to give me some details. Don't just tell me this is why it is. You got to say, explain. Use quantitative and qualitative data. And lastly, here's your free response question. Basically what you need to do is you need to justify the last two steps of the proof that are given here. Give me a reason why 3 and 4 have been listed here. And what you need to do in the free response section is I need you to answer not only what the answers are, but give me detailed reasons why you say what they are. I need to know the reasons why you're saying what you're saying. That's part of the homework, okay? So when you answer the question, make sure you also give me a reason why you're giving me your answers. So right now is about the time you want to pause the video or rewind to go and review things that you haven't fully understood, or to review the multiple choice question or the free response question, just to make sure you get your answers down, ready to go. For the form, please make sure you fill that form out and hit submit. If you have any questions, please fill out question number 6, I believe. It says, what questions do you have? I will respond as soon as I can. Enjoy!